My friends, in the last few hours, three things happened almost at the same time. An armed man was arrested lurking around the President of the United States. A ship was sent to the bottom in the Red Sea, and an entire army went on high alert and pointed their cannons at the border. Three pieces of news from three different corners of the world, and hardly anyone noticed that all three are connected by the same thread. They all point to a single place where at any moment, according to media reports, an agreement is expected to be announced, one the world will call peace, or at least temporary peace, but it's not really peace, folks. And by the end of this live, you'll understand why I never call this peace. You'll understand why this agreement, instead of ending the crisis, it only opens the next round of it. Stay with me until the end, because the piece that ties everything I'm going to say together is something I'll leave for the end of this live, and it shows Iran calling the shots. Live from Israel, straight from where everything happens. But before we dive in, do the usual real quick so you don't forget. Leave your thumbs up and your like because that's what will push this live to more people who don't know the channel. And now let's get started here live from Israel, folks. I'm going to start with the news that once again sent chills through the United States. A man was arrested lurking around Trump's golf clubs in California. And he wasn't just a curious guy looking for a photo, he was wearing a bulletproof vest and had a modified rifle legally, a pistol, ammunition, and a notebook with suspicious notes at home that was found later after the search. He was seen 2 days before the president arrived at that location, walking around the club, taking pictures, and filming the work of the security agents, monitoring the movement at the location. And here I need to be very honest with you, just like this channel always is, the authorities, at least officially, have not yet confirmed that it was a plan to eliminate the president. The man's motive is still under investigation, so I can't just speculate here on my own, okay? But I'm not going to state anything that no one else has stated so far. But the facts, those remain on the table. A heavily armed man studying the president's security on the eve of his visit, and it's not the first time, right, folks? On the contrary, just so you know, and if this is somehow news to you, then stay with me, because I'm here precisely to remind you. Less than 2 years ago, a bullet grazed Trump's ear. That photo that went around the world and also became part of Trump's campaign. Then there was a second case in Florida, a man hiding in the woods of a golf course, very similar to that, with the barrel of a rifle already pointing through the trees, waiting for Trump to pass by. The Secret Service saw this weapon in time and acted as well before he could fire. That one was convicted, sentenced to life in prison, and now this third incident in California. And these are just the cases that made headlines. There are those that haven't been officially disclosed yet. There was also another case this year, a man who opened fire trying to break into an official dinner in Washington. Do you remember that guy who ran like the Flash really fast? He tried once again to hit Trump, and he will also be charged with attempted murder. Now notice the pattern, guys. In just over a year, one after another, always the same man in the crosshairs. And Trump, when asked about it, answered by saying that the only consolation he has is what people say, right? They say that only important presidents become targets and that he is definitely important to someone. And this is where this story stops being just a police report from California and becomes pure geopolitics. Because think about this with me. Who is the man who today gives the ultimatum to Iran? It's Trump. Who is the man who put the American Navy in the Strait of Hormuz with the American blockade? Whose finger is on the trigger of an attack that could reshape the entire Middle East at any moment? It's him. It's Trump. It's this same man who over the weekend had an armed man lurking around his club. And I ask you here, without giving a definite answer, just planting the seed in your mind, at the moment when Trump corners Iran like never before, because they are cornered, even though the demands are absurd, they remain cornered. With the fleet in the strait and the ultimatum on the table, is it really that absurd to imagine that there are people in the world with a huge interest in getting exactly this man out of the way? I'm not saying there's a connection. I have none. I want that clear, since you know how the system works. I can't say anything for sure. So far, there's nothing that connects this guy, the one who's in jail, to any foreign country. And I don't even need there to be, right? Because a few live streams ago, I already explained how this regime, Hamas, and other terrorist organizations operate. They don't need to send an agent with a stamped passport to do their dirty work. They do something much cheaper and much harder to track. They spread propaganda on the internet, right? They plant hatred, point out the enemy, and wait for someone among billions of people, someone on the other side of the world, alone and angry, to take the bait. And this world is full of disturbed people. We know that very well. And a single post can be the push someone needs to do something crazy. People who act like real little robots there, just waiting to be activated. The regime doesn't pull the trigger, it just needs to whisper in the ear of someone who's already ready to pull it. That's why I don't treat this arrest here as just a throwaway item buried in the news. Because it's extremely important, because when the leader of the stronger side becomes a target right at the height of the standoff, that at the very least deserves everyone's attention. Because at the same time this was happening inside the United States, on the other side of the world, almost at the same time, the sea was catching fire again. Yesterday I told you here about the Oman corridor, about the ships getting hit near Hormuz, and today the theater shifted locations. It moved to the Red Sea, on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. And this time, it wasn't just a scare, a cargo ship was hit and sank completely. An Indian-flagged cargo ship, the crew was 14 people, 13 Indians, and 1 Yemeni. And here comes the only good news from this part. All 14 were rescued alive by the Coast Guard and taken to a safe port. But the ship went to the bottom of the sea. And who would be behind all this? The Houthis, that militia from Yemen, more of Iran's proxies, as I've explained to you here so many times. They belong to Iran. On the same day, the Houthis claimed a second missile attack against a Saudi oil tanker near an important port in Saudi Arabia, in the Red Sea. And now, look at this move, because it's smarter than it seems, folks. The Houthis announced a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia. Everyone already knows that. The blockade is in effect against the world's largest oil exporter. And here's the brilliant part of this move. At no point do they say they're following orders from Iran. On the contrary, they present this as self-defense. They say they're only responding to the blockade that already exists from Saudi Arabia. The blockade that Saudi Arabia imposes on them, on the Houthis in Yemen, it's the victim fighting back. This is their justification. This is the story they're telling. And it's a very convenient story. Because in practice, the one who controls the hand that fires the Houthis missile, the one who controls the closed strait, is always the same, folks. Tehran. The arm presents itself as having its own will so that no one points to the brain, which is the one commanding the body. You can see here that the noose is tightening, right? On one side, Iran squeezes the Strait of Hormuz right at the entrance to the Gulf. On the other side, the Houthis squeeze the Red Sea on the way out to the west. These are the two gates through which all the oil from the Middle East leaves. And Iran, through its proxies, has its hand on both doorknobs at the same time. It's not about an Indian ship, folks. It's about who controls the veins through which the planet's energy flows. And just look at the message this sends to the whole world. To you as well, on the other side, who supports the regime. In the end, you'll also pay more at the pump when you fill up your car, and in the price of food. A civilian cargo ship with sailors who have nothing to do with this war was sent to the bottom of the sea, and by some miracle, no one died. The goal here isn't military. The goal is terror. It's fear. It's to make sure that no industry or shipping company in the world dares to send a ship through there without thinking twice. Because every time a ship is attacked on a route like that, the insurance cost, because these ships are insured, skyrockets, folks. It gets more and more expensive. And we're all going to pay for that. Because if the insurance goes up, the cost of transportation goes up, the price of that freight goes up. And when companies realize that the risk isn't worth it, they simply stop sending ships. Fewer ships passing through means fewer goods arriving, and the price of everything goes up together. From oil to grain, from fuel to bread. And then, a bunch of barefoot terrorists in Yemen managed to affect the wallet of an entire family on the other side of the world. Even in South America, folks, this is the asymmetric power that Iran discovered and exploits like no one else. And here, my friends, is where I need you to connect these dots with me, because it's important, because it's easy. It's very easy to look at each of these news stories as if they're just isolated cases from different corners of the world. Unfortunately, that's how the media treats these cases, as isolated incidents. Lone wolf, right? Shooter lurking around the president in the States, another shooter lurking around the president in the United States, ship sunk in the Red Sea, the Strait of Hormuz mined, attack. An attack here, another militia there, a drone, right, that accidentally crashes somewhere in Iraq. These aren't isolated cases, folks. These aren't isolated cases. It's all the same hand behind it. They're the arms of the same body, Iran. moving at the same time on different continents. While the world treats each blow as a separate incident, those behind it are counting on exactly that they won't connect the dots. They count on no one putting the pieces together and seeing the full picture. Because it's exactly this picture that I want you to see today, because this has been happening for a long time. And it doesn't end with just these cases, folks. It can go much further than that. It was in Venezuela before that. It's also there at the triple border of Brazil. There are other places in the world. These arms are very long. The scariest part is this is happening now, not in the past. While I was preparing this live stream for you, a new alert came in. The international agency that monitors navigation issued a warning about an ongoing attack. A cargo ship about 30 nautical miles off the coast of Yemen. And there's more, okay? This is after all those other incidents. This just came out as well. The official statement. Let me post the statement here. The official statement. This is the website I follow. You can do this too, okay? You can keep track of what's happening. These reports about attacks in the Red Sea, actually anywhere in the world. Look at these 3 warnings here. The second, the fourth, the fifth here. There's also the first over here on the other side. The first, okay? These were all attacks. This is the latest one. Cargo ship about 30 nautical miles away. No, 9 nautical miles. Okay? It triggered the emergency alert saying it was being attacked by armed men. In other words, while the world is talking about a peace agreement, and there are people talking about that. On one side of the map, right? On the other, a ship is calling for help in real time as we talk on our live stream. Guys, it's happening right now. While the sea was boiling in the south, a third front was heating up in the north. Pay attention, guys. This right here, look. Red Sea, it's here. For those unaware, this is the Red Sea, where it just happened, where the Houthis are in control. And here is where Iran has control, along with the American blockade, which should be around here, okay? So this is happening right now, guys. Look at this. And this, my friends, is about the north. Let's talk about the north here. Up there, Iraq. It's up there in Iraq. This is very important. It's the most surprising of all, and I'm sure that almost no one is noticing this on the other side of the world, not even in Europe, because it has barely been reported yet. Syria. Suddenly, without warning, without any official explanation, the entire Syrian army went on maximum alert. This happened overnight. The highest level of readiness. They cancelled all soldiers' leaves. Every single Syrian soldier had their leave cancelled. They ordered every military member to rush back to their unit. And most importantly, they moved entire army divisions to a specific border. Do you know which border? The border with Iraq. And here I need to give you some context, because without it, this won't make sense to you either, folks. Some people have just arrived and are now following what's happening in the Middle East, and you need to understand this. This is no longer Bashar al-Assad's Syria, with Assad now in Russia after fleeing there. It's not that Syria anymore, folks. It's El-Jolani's Syria now. And this changes absolutely everything. Everything. Because before we were talking about a regime that supported the Iranian side, and now we're talking about a regime that doesn't support the Iranian side. For more than 50 years, Bashar al-Assad's family, the Assad family, ruled Syria with an iron fist, and especially in the last decade, Assad was the key figure, this guy, in Iran's axis. It was through his Syria that weapons from Tehran reached Hezbollah. That was the route. Syria was Iran's land bridge to the Mediterranean. But at the end of 2024, that regime fell. Everyone followed this here on the channel. Assad fled and a new government took over precisely by overthrowing the man who served whom? Iran. In other words, the new Syria is no longer Tehran's backyard. On the contrary, it wants Iran far away from there. And on the other side of this border, in Iraq, what's there? Exactly. A quick little lesson for you who might have missed it or forgotten. I'm here to remind you, right? On this other side of the border, look. On this other side here, look, Syria-Iraq. Let's move it a bit closer. Syria and Iraq. Who's on the other side of the border? The militias that answer to Iran. Remember Hezbollah in Iraq? Yeah, they're still here on this other side. The same ones I told you about yesterday still refuse to hand over their weapons, though the Prime Minister said they'll do it by the end of September. So put the pieces together. New Syrian army, anti-Iran, moving toward this border here. Look. Right here at this border, exactly, okay? Running toward this border. On the other side are the pro-Iran militias from Iraq, right? Everyone is pro-Iran, everyone is Shia. But Syria is not Shia, it's Sunni, and there's more. Syria didn't stop at moving troops. They sent a direct message to the Iraqi government. According to Iraqi sources, they warned that any attack coming from Iraqi territory against Syria will not go unanswered. And I'm bringing this up, folks. I'm bringing this up so you can understand how this region is a powder keg. It's a powder keg. All of a sudden, with almost no one in the West noticing, there are already rumors of a confrontation between Syria and Iraq. Two countries that until recently weren't even on the radar of this whole crisis, right? We didn't even talk about them. A country warning its neighbor in front of the whole world that it's going to retaliate. That's not diplomatic language at all. It's the language of someone who's already got their finger on the trigger, just waiting for the first move from the other side. In other words, from the Iranian militias. Do you see what's starting here? It's a new front. If it starts, it's another front. It's another war. Not between Israel and Iran the way the world is used to seeing it, and not Israel and the United States against Iran either. It's between the new Syria and Iran's proxies inside Iraq, and that changes everything. It changes everything completely. For decades, this board was easy to understand. On one side, Iran and the groups that obey it. On the other, Israel, the Americans, and the Gulf Arab countries, each one in their own corner with very well-defined teams. And now Syria, which has always played on Iran's team, switched sides because Bashar al-Assad is gone. Not only did it switch sides, it's now targeting former partners. When a major player does this mid-game, it shakes up the entire board and scrambles everything. The Middle East is reorganizing right before our eyes. The old alliances have fallen, and new ones are forming based on distrust and with guns pointed. And there was proof of that on the same day, guys. Right on the day of that warning from the Syrian army, the Lebanese army announced that it had stopped rocket smuggling that was coming from Syria and headed to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Heavy rockets, heavy weapons, the kind that attack from a distance. They were headed to be delivered to Hezbollah. They definitely came from Iran. Weapons are still trying to make their way from Iran, passing through Syria and reaching Hezbollah. It could be that the army's presence at the border is to somehow prevent this from happening again. But now there's a new Syria, folks, right in the middle of that route. They won't let this happen so easily, and they don't want to be that weapons corridor anymore. And that's why the border is on fire, folks. Now, I also want to pause for a second and put together everything I've told you so far, because this is the part that really matters too. A shooter lurking around the American president. Write that down. Ships sinking on both sides of the peninsula. Syria and Iraq are on the verge of a confrontation because suddenly the army went on full alert and everyone headed to the border. It doesn't look like training to me, guys. It looks like chaos. It seems like a bunch of random news, right? That's the impression it gives. Each one from a different corner of the world. Shooting in California, a shipwreck over there in the Red Sea, tanks on the Syrian border. What does one thing have to do with the other? You must be asking yourselves exactly that, my friends. Everything. Because all of them revolve around a single point that's being decided right now as we're talking. It could be that during this live, the announcement comes out. It could be, right? The announcement of peace. I really doubt that's going to happen, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I was mistaken this time, okay? Maybe I was mistaken this time. The Strait of Hormuz and the man at the center of it all is the same, Donald Trump. In each of these situations, it's his name that comes up in the middle because he supports Syria. Remember that? That he shook Giuliani's hand there? So, we should never forget that detail. And now I bring you the centerpiece of the day that ties all of this together. Because today, according to the American press, the agreement about the strait, once again, will be ready. Or it's already ready. Or the agreement has already been approved. Something like that. But it hasn't been signed. Okay? According to the press, both the Arab press and the American press, and less so, the Persian press. Over there, they hardly talk about it. And this is expected to be announced at any moment. We've seen this movie before, folks. We've all seen this movie before, where it's going to be announced at any moment and nothing comes of it, right? Let me explain to you what's in this agreement, because the details tell the truth that the headline keeps hiding. It's a temporary agreement. Let's make this very clear. It's a temporary agreement. That word temporary is the key to everything. Once again, if it's signed, it lasts 60 days with an option to extend. Remember the 60 days? That didn't work out? So, this one would have another 60 days with an option to extend it even further down the line. During these 60 days, the ships entering the Gulf will follow a route in the north, right along the coast of Iran. Here, look, let's pull it up here. They're discussing this agreement now. Look, they'll pass through here. Right next to Iran, okay? This would be the route right next to Iran. And those leaving through a southern route on the Oman side, but in coordination with Iran. Look, the exit is here. Okay, this would be the exit. And here would be the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz. But to pass through this point here, they need to call Iran on this other side and say, hey, I'm passing with my ship. Do you allow it? Okay, I'm going. If there's no coordination, they can be hit. In other words, the one who controls this area is Iran, my friends. And there's also a technical detail that shows the extent of the damage in this region here. The agreement provides for only 30 days to clean up out of those 60, just to clear the naval mines that were planted in the middle of the strait. Just so you have an idea of how bad things have gotten here, the main oil corridor on the planet is mined, folks. Mined. It's going to take a month just to make it safe again. It's absurd, right? And it wasn't just Iran and Oman at that table, no. Behind the scenes, others were also working, or are still working. Qatar, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia, everyone rushing to put out the fire before it consumed the entire region. And here's a sentence I need you to listen to very carefully. According to the press, the very press that revealed this agreement, the American press, it meets some of Iran's demands for more control over the Strait of Hormuz. Control that Iran didn't have before this war. We need to make this very clear. And what does this mean in practice? Iran closed the strait by force, sank the ship, killed sailors, drove oil prices sky high, and even the number of sailors who lost their lives throughout this whole war. I don't know the exact number. Some say 11, others 16, and some think it's much higher. To this day, we don't know the exact number of sailors who lost their lives in this small passage here, okay? There's no official number for that because each one came from a different place, okay? Each one came from a different place. And the result of the negotiation is that Iran comes out with more power over Hormuz than it had before this war started. And we need to make that very clear, guys. We have to support our side, but we have to understand that they come out with much more power than they had before. Look, he broke the display window, and that's what Iran did. They broke it and ultimately won the right to run the store. In other words, that's exactly what happened. That's the price of peace they're going to sell you. If it comes with some kind of agreement soon, that's what they'll say. And there's a detail that completes the picture of what it's like to negotiate with this regime. Just 3 weeks ago, the White House believed this deal was done. Remember? Everyone was celebrating. Everything was set. The handshake. Set up photos for the newspaper, photos for social media, statements everywhere. And what did Iran do? What did Iran do? Do you remember? They went back to attacking the ships. They broke the agreement and started the attacks again. This loop has already happened a few times. There were 2 weeks of fighting that almost turned into a full-scale war in this region just to get back to where we are today. Almost at the same point. Guys, nothing has changed. Nothing. So when you hear soon that peace has arrived, remember these stories. With this regime, a signed agreement doesn't mean it'll be honored. It's just a pause to breathe and recharge. I find it funny to call it American imperialism, right guys? American imperialism. No one looks at France. No one looks at what the Muslims conquered throughout the Middle East, right? No one talks about that, but they only see the Americans anyway. And that's why I'm going to tell you something here with complete honesty. Even this agreement, I'll only believe it, my friends, at the exact moment it's announced. Because we've already lived through this same scenario a few times in recent months. Everyone thought everything was settled, everything was signed, and suddenly, out of nowhere, it all started over again. And here's proof that caution is necessary. Hot off the press. It came out while I was building the narrative for you here. Trump saying that the agreement will be announced today or tomorrow. Okay? He just said that a little while ago. That the agreement will come out today or tomorrow. And almost at the same time, Reuters heard the other side. And according to Iranian sources, despite Trump's excitement, it's still too early to talk about an agreement, and several important issues remain unresolved. Look at that, folks. And there was also an almost comical detail here, comical comedy, folks, if it weren't so serious. Reuters also points out that the Iranian foreign minister himself, Aragati, one of the key players in this negotiation, is on vacation right now. So, who's going to sign this agreement? Who's going to sign? In the middle of the biggest crisis in the Strait of Hormuz in decades, the guy went on vacation. In other words, on one side, the Americans announce imminent peace, and on the other, the Iranian negotiator isn't even at the table. If he's even the negotiator, right? Is this guy really the one negotiating? That's the distance between the stage and what's going on behind the scenes. And there's something almost nobody is talking about, but it's the most important thing of all. Nobody really knows who Trump is negotiating with on the other side. We never found out. Because Iran today is divided internally, that's a fact. On one side, there's the president and the foreign minister who support negotiations, who want an agreement. The president there, Pazekian. On the other side, the radicals in parliament and especially the Revolutionary Guard, who call any agreement surrender and betrayal. And look how far this fight goes. The president of Iran himself, Pazekian, had to come out publicly to deny that he's being forced to negotiate. This happened yesterday, folks. He had to speak publicly. And in parliament, there are people accusing the government of staging a coup for negotiating with the Americans. So, even if President Pezeshkian shakes hands with Trump tomorrow, here's the million-dollar question. Will the Revolutionary Guard that really has its finger on the trigger accept this deal? Because in Iran, the one who signs the paper isn't always the one who really calls the shots. We know that, and that's why I won't vouch for any agreement until I see with my own eyes that everything here has stopped. And now, the piece I promised at the beginning of this live. If you missed it, folks, go back to the start and watch it again, because you need to watch it to understand, okay? And it ties the whole board together. Why did Trump accept an agreement that, in the end, gives more power to Iran? That's the question. Hey, he's the one who's always saying he's the strong man, the strongest man of all. The answer, my friends, has two layers and both are important. The first one, I already explained to you yesterday, but I'll repeat it here in detail. The American stockpiles. Remember the missile stockpiles? So, I'll just remind you of the essentials here, because today, this story has a new chapter. Yesterday, it was revealed the United States used nearly all its precision missiles in this conflict. And today, the Secretary of State publicly stated there has been progress. That there is hope for an agreement soon. So, put the two things together. The United States with depleted stockpiles and at the same time in a hurry to wrap this up as quickly as possible. This isn't someone negotiating from the strongest position in the world, folks. Not at all. It's someone who needs a truce as much as the enemy across the table. And look at the tightrope Trump is walking. On one hand, he needs to look tough, so he says things like, the strait will open very soon or they'll get hit much harder. He was saying that again yesterday and today. And on the other hand, he makes a deal that gives Iran more control than it had before. Lion's threat and lamb's deal, okay? That's what people are saying here in Israel. Lion's threat and lamb's deal. And that's the gap between what he says and what he does. Maybe signing it is what really tells the truth about this moment. Will he really sign this deal? Or is it just another way to buy a little more time for something? We've been buying time for a long time now for something that might happen at some point in the future. The second layer is the calendar. I've mentioned this before, including the Arbain pilgrimage of millions in Iraq now at its peak today and the upcoming elections. All these clocks are pushing both sides toward a truce right now, and for the big confrontation to start after all of this. And that's why I insist so much on one idea. What is about to be announced, if it is announced, I'll say it again, if it is announced, it's not peace, folks, it's not peace. It's a ceasefire with an expiration date, 60 days. It's written in the agreement itself. 60 days for each side to reload, reposition, and come back more prepared. Look at that. Pay close attention to Iran's situation. They want a guarantee, a safe passage. The Middle East remains a murky region, and eventually, a leader will have at their disposal a nuclear weapon ready for immediate use if this takes any longer. Look at that, folks. This thing that's going on in the Iranian media. And this is where I wrap up my analysis with you, and you can think whatever you want afterwards. You can write whatever you want, Lefty. I'll let you write too, okay? You can write whatever you want there. Of course, if you insult, you'll be blocked by the system as usual. It's not even by me. The system blocks you automatically. If you're anti-Semitic, you'll also be blocked immediately because the system will block you. So, be careful with your words, but write smart things, okay? None of what I told you today is the end of this story, folks. The shooter in California, the ships at the bottom of the sea, Syria armed at the Iraqi border, the Hormuz Agreement, they are all symptoms of the same disease. An axis led by Iran that is being pushed, pressured, cornered, but has not been destroyed. Let me make this very clear. It has not been destroyed. It retreats on one front and attacks on another. It loses total control of the strait and sinks the ship in the Red Sea. It loses Syria as an ally and arms the militias on the other side in Iraq. He accepts a deal in Hormuz, maybe only in his own way, and on the same day he sends a fiery warning everywhere. That's what happens. He's negotiating on the side and sinking the ship on the Red Sea side because they're the ones who control the shipping routes. It's like squeezing a water balloon, for example, right? You squeeze one side and it bulges on the other. And that's why this kind of enemy is so hard to defeat. The way we fight nowadays, it's very difficult. He doesn't have just one capital, guys. Just one army, just one weak spot. He doesn't have one. He's a web spread across 6 countries that rebuilds itself every time you cut a thread. And the only real way to end this isn't with a 60-day paper agreement. It's to cut the web at its center, right at the core, not at the edges like the United States is trying to do. And the only country that understood this You know which one it is, right, guys? And the one that acts at the center, everyone already knows which one it is. It's Israel. While the world celebrates temporary agreements and signs papers with those who tore up the previous ones, Israel is the only one that keeps working at the root of the problem, away from the cameras, every single day. But the rest of this conversation will have to wait until later, because we'll have more information about the situation in Iran soon. Because this region has been in conflict, my friends, since forever, throughout its entire history. And no signature at a negotiating table is going to erase overnight the hatred of so many years, of 1,000 years, of more than 1,400 years between Sunnis and Shiites. And what we're seeing today is not the end. It's just another pause. If it comes, it'll just be another pause. And I'll be here during the pause and whatever comes after, looking for both sides in all 4 languages, so you never miss out or have to depend on random headlines from anyone. If this analysis is helping you see today in a way no other channel has shown you, do me a favor. Leave your like. For mortadella, leave your dislike. Alright? Subscribe and share this live stream with someone who only saw a clip out of context, straight from the mountains of Judea. Something is happening here. Thank you. Yeah, just a second. Pay close attention, guys. There's another front opening up here again, slowly. It appears so, but I can't confirm since it's not officially announced. Well, 2 soldiers fell in southern Lebanon due to an attack, probably by Hezbollah. The Israeli army issued an immediate evacuation order for a specific location there in Lebanon, okay? There in southern Lebanon. And the army has already fired artillery at southern Lebanon and will probably launch airstrikes in the next few hours as well, if no one intervenes. Because it seems that 2 Israeli soldiers have fallen in southern Lebanon now. In other words, Hezbollah broke, right, completely the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah now. At this very moment we're talking, folks, 6:10 p.m. Israel time. If the army fires against Lebanon or against Beirut, let's be clear, Iran promised to retaliate against Israel. Does anyone remember that promise? Could it be that? Is that what's going to change this whole question of whether there's a deal or not? Because the moment they fire against Israel, Israel will fire against Iran and the war will start all over again. This just happened, guys. 2 soldiers were killed in southern Lebanon. 2, okay? In the middle of a ceasefire. A violation there by Hezbollah itself. I'll repeat it 1,000 times. Maybe one day, a little light will go on in the mind of the Israeli government. Lebanon is Hezbollah and Hezbollah is Lebanon. It's ridiculous to try to make a deal. I've said this many times since the very first day of my channel. Lebanon is Hezbollah, Hezbollah is Lebanon, and southern Lebanon is Hezbollah. The people who live there are supporters of Hezbollah. The guys who live there are the very Hezbollah terrorists themselves. So there's no point in this story of let's filter them out. Let's get the people out of there, folks. It won't work. It just won't work. It's a never-ending soap opera, 1,400 years of soap opera, with many chapters and many seasons. But this year it ends, folks. This year it can't go on. Either it happens now, before the midterm elections in the United States, and there's a good chance this will happen now because Netanyahu needs to do something big, something really big, also to stay in power, right? To get more votes in the next election. Netanyahu has already done a lot. He needs to do a little more because there are people dissatisfied with Iran, with Lebanon. There are still people dissatisfied, guys. There are people who think they should live inside Lebanon and that they should live inside the Gaza Strip. There are people who support this. And right now, a family crossed into Syria and was removed from there by the army. An Israeli family already wanting to build cities inside Syria, they crossed to the Syrian side right at this moment. In other words, there are people who think and believe that because of what happened on October 7th, the price they need to pay is to lose the land. And I agree. At this point, I agree, but I don't think they should live there now. Let the army stay there longer, okay? Let the army keep the place secure. They need to lose land in order to learn. The negotiations between Israel and Lebanon were interrupted earlier than expected today over in Rome due to the allegation that there were information leaks from the Lebanese delegation, leaked some kind of information and will be resumed tomorrow. Okay, Netanyahu also left. He was in the middle of the trial there. He said he needed to leave immediately because a lot of serious things are happening in the region. This just happened a little while ago, guys. Shalom. Aldo Souza, how are you, my friend? Thank you for the super chat. Ana Maria Odayan, I think that's how your name is pronounced. Cor Cordavi Bezrata Shemana Renata Sheara. Joel Mafreitas. Thank you for the super sticker as well. Thank you so much to everyone who sent a super sticker or a Pix contribution to help, okay? I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And for those who want to sign up for our tour, the channel's first tour, guys, Live Israel, I hope this isn't the first time I'm announcing it. The first time didn't work out because of the war. This one is for next year, not for next month, okay? It's for next year, guys. Next year, 2027, I'll leave the link pinned here in the comments. All the information is in that link. If you're interested, just sign up through the link and we'll get in touch with you. Marcel, who is the guide? One of the best guides here in Israel, okay? I think the only thing that would change is if Israel fully entered this war again. So, Israel is still out of this war. For those who asked about tourism, guys, Israel is out of this war. Israel is fighting there in Lebanon, inside Lebanon, and Israel is inside the Gaza Strip, but Israel is not fighting against Iran. It's been a few months now, okay? So, if Iran launches anything at Israel, then Israel will get back into the war. This will happen again at some point, okay? During this period, at some point it will happen. It's inevitable. I don't see a possibility of this not happening. Israel warns the enemy before attacking. Is there any other country in the world that does this? No, there isn't, right? Only Israel. Only Israel does this kind of thing. Meanwhile, another war is happening. Everyone thinks the war in Russia is over, right, guys? The images of what's happening there are impressive, of what's happening there. They're impressive, guys. Impressive. There was a Ukrainian attack today against an oil refinery, another oil refinery in Odessa. There was also a Russian attack against Kiev during the night. In other words, things are happening. The Ukrainians also destroyed a warehouse, another one of those wild berries warehouses. In the Tula region, another warehouse was destroyed. And yesterday we also had... Yeah, the Russians attacked a depot with flammable materials in Kiev during the night. Anyway, the war continues over there. It hasn't stopped, no. And yesterday we had explosions at the port of Dubai, okay? Explosions at the port of Dubai. Mysterious. The Houthis came on television and said today that it wasn't them who did it. Something exploded over there. Recording isn't possible. In that region, anyone who films there is arrested and faces a severe sentence. So no one can record, no one can send photos. There's only a video of some smoke coming from the port, but it doesn't look like something small happened there. It was a considerable explosion, which many people heard and others saw smoke from afar. So there was an explosion yesterday, a mystery in Dubai too. Probably a Houthi attack, right? Or maybe an Iranian drone hit the port of Dubai, but for now, total silence. Sometimes this silence is intentional so it doesn't interfere with negotiations, okay? They ask that sometimes you treat this attack cautiously. Don't respond, don't make statements. Stay quiet so you don't interfere with the negotiations. This also happened in Israel several times. When Israel was negotiating at some point in history with Hamas, Hamas would fire a missile, then they would say it was lightning. The lightning that triggered the siren. Anyway, this also happened here many times. Kisses. Putin is not going to back down. I didn't understand. He's not going to retreat, if that's what you mean. Funny that no flotilla goes to Russia or Ukraine. They don't go to Russia, they don't go to Ukraine, they don't go to Yemen, right? Look at the poverty in Yemen. Nobody goes to Yemen either. There's no flotilla going there. Do you know why? Because they're all cowards. These guys know that the moment they enter a place like that, they're not going to get out of there so easily. Do you think that guy, that Brazilian guy, I don't even remember his name because I don't like to fill my hard drive with that kind of name. This guy is weak, a coward. Do you think this guy has the guts to go into Syria? Do you really think he has the courage to take a flotilla to Syria today? Or to Iran? Or anywhere else? To Ukraine? They don't have the guts, guys. They don't have the guts. These guys are weak. They are, I like the leftist stooges that show up here sometimes, right? They're all keyboard tough guys. There are a lot of keyboard tough guys. They're all cowards. As soon as the first bullet flies, I'm the first to run away. The money from Lebanon is less than a tenth of what the terrorists there have, so it doesn't affect them. Raul Perotto wrote, "The war's end will mean the end of Zionism. Many people like you who wrote things like this here are no longer with us, right? You know that. For more than 70 years, everyone has been saying the same thing. So keep talking. There's no problem. As long as this dream is in the mind of someone like you, right? This fantasy belongs in a fantasy world. The fact is, we're inside the Gaza Strip. We're inside Lebanon, we're inside Syria, and we're not going to leave from there. No matter who it hurts, we're going to stay there for a long, long time. And soon, cities will also exist there. One thing at a time. If you don't believe it, look it up. Check the small maps. Let's add the map here. The Israeli positions, look right here. The end, right? Look at the end here. I see the end. We're inside here, my friend. It's over. There's no one else here. Let's see here. Look, the end is here too. Syria. No one even talks about it anymore, right? In this region, it's over. This here is Israel. It's Israel. Lebanon, same thing. Ours. It's over. If you see an end to this, you seriously don't understand what's going on. Look, the Israeli army issued an urgent evacuation alert for the residents of the village. I'll put it here for you to read. An urgent evacuation alert was issued for Mansouri village residents in southern Lebanon ahead of planned attacks on Hezbollah after the terrorist organization Hezbollah violated the ceasefire agreement. The Israeli army finds itself forced to operate against them using force, says Lieutenant Colonel Ella. The Israeli army's Arabic spokesperson Ella told Mansouri residents to evacuate at least 1 kilometer north of the village. Anyone found near Hezbollah agents, facilities, or weapons is putting their life at risk. In other words, an attack will happen, probably soon, in response to those 2 soldiers who fell there in the north. Look at that. The Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the agreement will probably be signed unless it is undermined by a third party. The agreement does not state that passage through the strait is safe. There is no agreement, and it doesn't guarantee safe passage through the strait. We're stuck in the same loop. The same old loop? This is the live stream for now. If something major happens in the Middle East, or if the Israeli army attacks Lebanon, I'll return with real-time updates. Otherwise, I'll see you later for another stream. To bring you the rest of this story about the agreement and what's happening in Lebanon right now as well. If Iran attacks Israel, they will destroy Iran's energy system. Wouldn't it be the best publicity for Trump to destroy the Iranian regime? Trump still needs a headline. Lucas, I've already said it, I've already told you, and I'll say it one more time. In my opinion, this whole story is for the Americans to leave quietly and smoothly. Alright, Israel wants to fight? Go ahead, keep fighting. I'm going to keep sending weapons for you to fight, but we're out of this. To me, that's the goal of all these agreements. At some point, Israel is going to attack Iran on its own, without depending on the Americans, just like it was in the 12-day war in June last year. Israel fought alone every day, and on a single day, at the end of it all, they came with the American bombers. That's it. During all the other days, it was Israel that did everything in Iran. Everything. They took down all of Iran's air defenses all the way to Tehran. Do you remember that? Did you forget? 12 days of war. It was only Israel. Only Israel. The United States was not in that war. Trump likely got upset when Israel fought alone and took all the credit, so he sent bombers to destroy the nuclear plants, trying to take credit for the whole operation. But everyone here knows only Israel actually fought. There are reports from residents who saw an interceptor in the center of Israel today, okay? That's just for those who saw it. Heard the interceptor overhead. It's a test of the ARAM system that's happening, and it was also announced earlier today that this would happen. Hugs to my friends. I'll be back later with another live stream. See you.